Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano. Today's the 29th of June, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So we have another update from Coinbase today regarding their SEC lawsuit, or the lawsuit from the SEC against Coinbase. So Paul Grewal posted today that Coinbase filed their answer and notice of intent to file a motion to dismiss the SEC's case against Coinbase. You can read the response for yourself, and their arguments speak for themselves, as Paul Grewal says here. So of course I'll link this in the YouTube description below, but I think that the TLDR of this is that Coinbase is arguing that the SEC has overstepped its bounds in what it's charging Coinbase with and what it's going after Coinbase with, and because of that, the lawsuit should be dismissed altogether, or the case generally should be dismissed altogether. I'm no legal expert, but I doubt that a judge is going to grant this, like a full dismissal of the SEC's case. But, you know, knowing what little I know about lawyers generally, I think this is kind of what they do, right? They're basically, it's like a negotiation tactic, right? It always is. It's basically asking for a lot and then over time kind of accepting less and less until you get to a point where you're happy with it, but because you started at like one end of the spectrum, you kind of were able to walk back stuff, but still get more than what you maybe you originally would have got if you hadn't asked for everything. And yeah, so I mean, you can read the whole thing here. This is 177 pages, which is quite insane. I don't know how much of this is like unique versus just boilerplate stuff. I know that in a lot of these things, there's just boilerplate stuff in them, but with what I think this is basically Coinbase's response to each and every thing that the SEC has actually gone after them with. And you can actually see, as you scroll down, you can see the SEC, what the SEC says, and then the response, right? This is very long because, I mean, it's 177 pages because it's got a response for each and every point that the SEC has gone after Coinbase with, which is just insane. Like, I could never be a lawyer. Like, imagine having to troll through all this paperwork all the time just to basically hopefully get to an outcome that is good for your client or good for the, you know, the firm that you work for. It's just insane. I don't know how people do this. Much respect to them for it. I know that lawyers have a kind of weird reputation in the world. You know, some are good, some are bad. I guess that's the same thing with every industry. But yeah, if you want to read each of Coinbase's responses, you can. It's in this filing here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But as I said, the TLDR is basically that Coinbase argues the SEC has overstepped their bounds. That seems to be the main argument here. But they have gone the extra mile and have basically responded to pretty much everything that the SEC has gone after Coinbase for. So interesting light reading. No, not light reading, of course, but interesting reading for possibly the weekend if that is your thing. As I said, it'll be linked in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, Rodrigo Vasquia, who is a project manager at the Ethereum Foundation, has shared today that the Ethereum Academic Grants Round 2023 is now finalized. 43 projects with research teams from 21 countries were selected to receive over $2 million in funding. So you can check out all the projects for yourself and all the different categories and what they were funded with by going to the blog post. But just to give you the TLDR, there were, I believe, 8 categories here, and $2 million or $2.3 million was dispersed amongst them. There's 7 categories. Sorry, I counted the total row here as a category. So there's 7 categories with $2.3 million dispersed amongst them. The categories with the most projects were society and regulatory and economics and MEV, 12 projects in the former, 10 in the latter. And then you had a spattering from 2 to 6 projects in each of the categories of cryptography, execution layer, formal verification, P2P networking, and security, and all getting varying amounts of grant money here. So you can check out each and every one of these projects in the blog post, which will be linked in the YouTube description below, and you can see what they're all about, what they're working on. But great to see the Ethereum Foundation continue to fund all sorts of things in, I guess, the research and development space of not only Ethereum, but just academic kind of blockchain or crypto research generally. I think this kind of stuff is severely underfunded and severely underallocated to. And I think the Ethereum Foundation is definitely one of the leaders in this space for allocating. And could you imagine if instead of VCs and funds throwing hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars at these other L1s that really go nowhere, they were instead throwing that money at things like this, the world Refuel would probably be a much better place. But obviously, when it comes to being a VC or a fund, you want to get a return on your investments. And a lot of the time, that is coming from a token if you're investing in an L1, or pretty much all the time it's coming from a token. So the incentives are warped then. Sadly, I think that's the way it's going to be forever, really. But there are obviously a ton of initiatives around public goods funding. I've talked about them a lot in the past, Gitcoin, Protocol Guild, all that sorts of stuff. And the Ethereum Foundation grants is another one. And there's a bunch of others out there as well. Anyway, I'll link this in the YouTube description. You can go check it out. All right, next up, we have the announcement of the Diva DAO today. So for those of you who don't know, Diva is a new liquid staking protocol that is powered by distributed validator technology. So they announced today the Diva DAO, as I said, and they have airdropped tokens, so 10% of the total token supply to 15,000 unique Ethereum stakers and ecosystem participants. Now, to see eligibility for this, you can go to this docs page here and you can see that Diva OG contributors, Ethereum stakers, community members, and Ethereum staking developers were eligible for this airdrop. You can also visit the claim.diva.community URL here to connect your wallet and check if you've got tokens. I think the maximum amount per address was 12,000 Diva, and it has a billion Diva token supply. They're not transferable right now, so there's no value or anything attached to it. I don't know when they're going to be transferable. I think I saw some numbers thrown around, but I don't know exactly when this was going to be going live for trading here. And unfortunately, they say here, due to legal uncertainties surrounding staking operations in the US and Canada, US and Canadian nationals are excluded from the early distribution, and several other sanctioned countries have been excluded as well. I don't know what that means for like the airdrop and generally just kind of how they would identify these folks. It kind of seems, I don't know, a little bit weird to me that they would do this. But yeah, I'm sure there might be some more documentation around this if you look around for it, or maybe even join their social channels and ask about it. But yeah, anyway, back to what Diva is. As I said, it's a new liquid staking protocol powered by distributed validator technology. You can see here the validator design is that it's aiming to be resilient. Nodes are fully disposable, self-healing, ability to recover, full network liveness by regenerating keys, and redundancy up to 500 times better uptime thanks to DVT fallbacks, aggregated smoothing rewards, quick ejection of bad actors as part of the incentives and penalties, and trust minimized architecture with a can't be evil crypto economic system and collateral guarantees from operators. So I have yet to dive too deep into Diva itself, and I'm not endorsing it or anything like that, but I figured it was worth putting on your radar. One, for the airdrop. Two, because there's a new liquid staking protocol coming online, which is always pretty exciting in my opinion, and it's being powered by distributed validator technology, which is something that obviously is very important. There are projects working on this like Obel Network and SSV, so great to see Diva taking, I guess, a more niche approach to liquid staking here and kind of a different approach to what other liquid staking protocols has taken, in order to capture some of that growth, but also make a better liquid staking protocol. But anyway, you can go check out the thread and the blog post and everything else. I'll link it all in the YouTube description below. All right, so you guys remember the other day I was talking a lot about how to define, full Ethereum security or secured by Ethereum for different L2s that exist today and may exist in the future. And I feel like L2Beat, the website, has probably done the best job so far of defining this, and they've incorporated a lot of other people's thoughts into this. But really my conclusion the other day was that there's no kind of definition of what secured by Ethereum means, and different people have different interpretations of this. But I came across this interesting graphic from Dono today, who works in research at L2Beat, basically showing the different levels of Ethereum security that you get depending on the different properties of different L2s. So you can see here that each of the L2s has their own dotted line, which is basically a dotted line square, which goes around each of these properties that they have. So for example, with Arbitrum Nova, it has Ethereum security for liveness and censorship resistance, but it doesn't have it for data availability because it stores its data not on Ethereum L1, it stores it off chain, right? Whereas something like Arbitrum 1, its dotted line box here, line square, is going around liveness, censorship resistance, and data availability because it is on L1. Of course, the data is posted to L1. A based L2, so an L2 that is basically enshrined or using the beacon chain validators of Ethereum L1 as its sequencer. It has its box going all the way around everything I just mentioned, as well as ordering finality, so transaction ordering and receipt finality as well. And then you can see sovereign rollups is another category here, which don't inherit censorship resistance or liveness or receipt finality from Ethereum, but but can put their data on Ethereum and ordering finality also on using Ethereum there. And then you have DYDX as well as another example. So why I thought this was interesting was because these 5 properties are definitely probably the most important when it comes to defining how these L2s or rollups or whatever you want to call them inherit Ethereum security. But they're not the only thing, because as I mentioned the other day, the big thing is the multisigs, right? It's the governance of these things. And I'm going to talk more about the governance of L2s in today's episode as well. I've got another tweet to reference that. But really, if you have, let's say you're a based L2, right? But let's say that you have some part of your protocol that has a multisig attached to it that can do something like, I don't know, steal funds or something like that. Well, in that case, you're not really inheriting Ethereum security. And it's kind of a weird dynamic, because you could argue the same thing for every protocol that has a multi-sig, but that's just one interpretation of it. And I'm not saying it's the right or wrong interpretation. I'm not even saying it's my interpretation, but that is one interpretation of it. So if we move away from that and we accept that just because a project has governance around it or has a multisig around it doesn't disqualify it from inheriting Ethereum security, then we come back to these 5 core properties, and that's how we define Ethereum security. Now, this is a good start, I think. It definitely needs to be refined, but I think this is a really good start of basically putting a proper definition behind what Ethereum security means. Because, as I said, the term is being thrown around a lot. No one really knows what it means. There are different interpretations of it. But as well, even though you've got these 5 properties here, there are different interpretations of each of these properties, which you would have to define. And a lot of this goes into semantics debate and semantics arguments, and not everyone agrees on all the terminology there. But as I said, good start. We need to define the actual properties, and then we need to formalize this and get it kind of widely agreed upon before it becomes something that can be referenced in any serious capacity. But it all starts from here, and given that Donor is research at L2Beat, definitely probably one of the only people that is actually looking at this and working on this from a first principles approach. So I figured it was worth highlighting for you guys there. And you can go check out the actual kind of little diagram here for yourself, a little image here for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, I'm going to leave the governance chat actually till the end of the episode. So I'll get through a couple other things I wanted to get through first. Then I'm going to talk about L2 governance, because that's pretty important. So first thing is that O1 Labs here, who is one of the builders behind Mina protocol, have submitted a proposal to Optimism for the application of Mina's zero-knowledge proof stack to OP stack fraud proofs. This application is built on the groundbreaking MIPS ZKVM that they're building as part of the Mina protocol roadmap. Now, for those of you who don't know what Mina is, it's basically another L1, but they're using all forms of fancy ZK cryptography to power their L1. And honestly, I feel like Mina is the very definition of a research project. I don't think their L1 is ever going to get any serious traction, but they have a lot of really cool technology that can be applied to Ethereum, and they are very open to sharing it with the Ethereum community and even proposing things themselves, which is what they've done here. And they even describe why is this cool. They say here, we created Kimchi, our plonkish proving system, to help bring zero-knowledge proofs to the Web3 and Web2 worlds. The new MIPS functionality allows apps to be written in general-purpose languages in addition to the native and performant Snarky JS. And our response to the OP request for product leverages the years of testing Kimchi has gone through as part of Mina, as well as synergies between Ethereum and the leading ZK app developer community of Mina. It's the best of many worlds. You can learn more about this. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. But just great to see some cross-pollination here between an L1 that isn't Ethereum and an L2. I've said before, plenty of times, that I think that I mean, as much as I think that pretty much like all the other smart contract L1s are mostly pointless, I think they're pointless from trying to get like developers and users and trying to be or kill Ethereum perspective. But from a research perspective, a lot of them actually have a lot of interesting things that they're doing that Ethereum can incorporate it into their stack. I mean, just to sum off the top of my head, obviously Mina with the ZK stuff. Solana with transaction parallelization, that's really cool, I think. And that can be applied to L2s. I don't know if we're going to do it at L1, but definitely can be applied to L2s. Even Definity had RANDAO, which was applied to the Beacon chain, is actually in production on Ethereum right now. Like it's part of the Ethereum network. There was a bunch of other things. I can't remember off the top of my head all of them, but Ethereum learns and adapts from these other L1s and incorporates the technology into its stack. And I think that's great. And it kind of is a roundabout way VCs funding these things as well, because they're funding the L1s, which funds that building of that technology, and then Ethereum incorporates it. And it goes back to that original meme that Bitcoiners came up with, where they said that all the other chains were just test nets for Bitcoin. Bitcoin would eventually incorporate all the technology from the other chains, which obviously didn't materialize and probably won't materialize. But Ethereum really is doing that. It doesn't take everything. You know, it takes only the things that it feels are valuable. And that's what it's been doing for quite a while now. So cool to see some, I guess, like cross-pollination here, as I said, between Mina and OP or Optimism. You can check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, something funny I came across was a tweet from Arkham Intel here. So just to give some backstory before I go into the tweets, you may have heard about this custodian called Prime Trust that basically lost access to some, if not all, of their cold and hot wallets that stored crypto for various different entities within the crypto ecosystem. And then they were using customer funds to buy back that crypto in order to fill the hole. And it's all come apart recently. And obviously they've committed they've been accused of committing massive amounts of fraud. We're going to see what comes out of that. But I guess the side effect of them losing access to the keys that controlled these wallets is that there are wallets now that have funds in them that are potentially or almost certainly lost forever unless the keys are found again. And you can see this tweet here from Arkham Intel where they said, "We believe a wallet with a token portfolio worth over $45 million, consisting of 95% ETH, so 23,000 ETH, is a Prime Trust legacy wallet and is currently inaccessible to their team, matching the court filing here." So this is quite funny because if these keys are never found, that means that this 23,700 ETH is permanently gone, right? No one will be able to ever access this ETH again. There is not going to be any bailout here. Guessing the private key, I mean, if someone could guess the private key, it would probably be a bad thing for the entire Ethereum network, not just this wallet. And it effectively means it's burned. But what I find funny about this is that when you compare this ETH amount to the amount of ETH that is actually burned as part of EIP 1559, it doesn't really mean much because this is $45 million here, right? $45 million or I guess like $44 million worth of ETH and 23.7 thousand. If we go to the ultrasound.money website here and you go, I guess like if we scroll down to the burn here and you go over the last 30 days, we've burnt 70,000 ETH over the last 30 days alone, right? So just to put that in context for you, we've burnt more than triple the amount of ETH in the last 30 days than was lost here. So even though people will frame this as bullish and, you know, it makes ETH even more deflationary, it doesn't even hold a candle to the actual burn. And if we go since the merge, which is coming up on a year soon, right? But this was 287 days ago. So what, 9 months or something. We have burned almost 800,000 ETH, which is what, you know, doing my naive math here, you do 5 times 40x. It is almost, it's a bit less than 40x the amount that was lost here. So really, I feel sorry for people who probably lost money here with Prime Trust just being, I don't know, doing weird stuff after losing access to these private keys here. And I don't really care if it's bullish or bearish for ETH because I don't really think it puts a dent in anything. But I just figured it was worth highlighting because I wanted to show you just how it doesn't hold a candle to the amount of ETH that is burned by 1559, which I thought was pretty funny to see there. All right, so here's this governance tweet that I wanted to talk about. So Jacob Aliasofia put out a tweet today saying, "We thought scaling was the final-ish frontier of blockchains, but turns out L2s take us back to the age-old frontier of governance, specifically who gets to approve code changes. And I increasingly think the answer is L1s gave us a cool answer to that, and we should stick with it." So I think that L1 governance is a mess for a lot of L1s out there, where they either have a central body that controls everything and it makes it seem relatively smooth, or it's so decentralized that it just nothing happens. And I guess like that's Bitcoin. But there is a happy middle ground that I think Ethereum has found, this kind of Goldilocks zone where the governance is really decentralized. There is a broad set of stakeholders that are involved in governance, but things still get pushed through. The Ethereum roadmap still gets executed on, changes still go into the network with relatively no drama around it. So could we potentially get an L2 to that point? Like, could we get an L2 to the point where it can upgrade like Ethereum? Now, obviously, an L2 won't be able to do things like hard forks like Ethereum can, because unless it's like a sovereign L2 or something like that. But what it can do is it can come up with this rough consensus or kind of like this soft consensus for governance instead of doing token holder governance. Now, is that going to happen? I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because the incentive for it to happen is good for Ethereum. I mean, so the only incentive is that it's good for Ethereum, whereas the incentive for it not to happen and the incentive for these L2s to have token holder governance is a lot stronger, because obviously if these projects want to issue tokens, they have to issue them as governance tokens for regulatory reasons or for just general other reasons. And they basically need to say, well, the token can be used in governance, and then the community can vote on various different things and to drive value to the token, blah, blah, blah. So as to take responsibility away from the teams themselves. Now, can an L2 exist totally without a token? Sure, it can. Can an L2 exist in a truly immutable way where the only way to essentially fork the L2 would be to create another bridge and then convince everyone to move over? Sure, they can. Just like you could do it with Uniswap, right? Where basically you could say, okay, well, Uniswap does this with their different versions, but say you create another Uniswap, you call it something else, you fork it, and you say, this is the real Uniswap. For that to happen, what you would need to do is you would need to convince everyone not to use the other Uniswap and use your new real Uniswap. You would need to get all the liquidity. You would need to get all the brand and everything. You need to get everyone to accept that that's the real Uniswap. And this goes back to something that was being discussed maybe a couple of months ago now around L2s generally and how they do governance, and also what is the actual L2. Well, for a lot of the time, the L2s, the bridges are very important, but in order for you to convince someone that your bridge is the real bridge to that L2, you have to convince everyone. You have to convince everyone to move across, and it's not a small feat to do that. So in reality, I think what we're going to see is on-chain token holder governance for these L2s, and I think that's okay as long as the governance is limited in what it can do. If the governance can literally change anything, then I think that's kind of bearish, because you don't want to give the token holders too much power, because at the end of the day, token holder governance has a ton of problems with it. I don't like it for Ethereum L1. I think it's okay to do for DeFi applications. For L2s, I think the jury is still out on whether it's going to work or not. I know there are other L1s with on-chain governance already, such as Tezos and a bunch of others out there, but I don't like it. I haven't been a fan of it for quite a while, but we'll have to see. I mean, the L2s, they're going to be doing different governance approaches. They're going to be doing different things, different value accrual mechanisms for their tokens and stuff like that. So it's not going to be a kind of one-size-fits-all thing here, but I'm just very curious to see what they come up with, because as you guys know, Optimism's been doing a lot of experimentation around governance recently and been doing really well, I believe, in my opinion there. Arbitrum launched their token and DAO recently, and they're doing experiments. Polygon is going to be announcing their plans for their governance shortly as part of their Polygon 2.0 roadmap. ZK Sync published their ZK Credo thing, then the ZK Stack thing, and then they've been talking a lot about governance as well. I believe Starknet and Starkway started talking about it. So all of these different L2s are already talking about it, but at the end of the day, governance is very hard. It is the hardest thing, I think, in crypto. It is the final frontier of blockchains to get right. And Ethereum so far has gotten it right, I believe. It really is amazing that Ethereum's governance works, but it does. So it remains to be seen which L2s get it right and which ones get it wrong, and which ones result in hostile takeovers, which ones result in resilient networks. And I'm just generally curious to see how that all plays out there. All right, finally here, just a shout out that I recorded another Daily Gwei Drive-Thru episode with Eric Connor today. It will be out on Saturday for you guys, Saturday morning if you're in the US. It'll be a bonus episode, obviously on top of the regular refuels that you get. We talked about a lot of different things in this episode. I won't spoil too much for you, but we did focus, I think, at least half of the episode on market commentary generally. Eric has a lot of great insights here, and that's why I wanted to talk to him about that on that episode. And it's generally something that I don't talk about too much on the refuel as well. So it was refreshing to talk about it with him and about where we are in the market cycle, you know, what the future holds and everything like that. So, I mean, TLDR is that it was quite bullish. It definitely wasn't a bearish episode, but yeah, and I won't spoil the rest for you. You guys can check that out on Saturday. So keep an eye on your YouTube feed and your podcast feed there to see when that goes live. But I think on that note, that is going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.